Good morning, dear hearts. We are in lesson 74, and please subscribe. There is no will but God's. This idea is a central thought throughout the entire course because it is one that we must come to understand and accept. In the text, in chapter 9, section 1, first line, it says, "Fear of the will of God is one of the strangest beliefs that the human mind has ever made." Now think about that. Fear of the will of God, strangest beliefs, 911. It's where we go to. We can call on 911 when we are in a state of chaos and distress, because this is our miracle to understand that there indeed is nothing to fear from the will of God. And it tells us in the lesson that this idea is wholly true, and therefore it cannot give rise to illusions. And without illusions, there's no conflict within our mind. It is only the taking on of illusions that has thrown us into a space of darkness and despair and not knowing. But when we accept that God's will, God's desire for us is the exact same one that we have for us, because he wants nothing different for his beloved children than for them to be without illusions and to be in peace and joy and know that they are loved, for their happiness to be all that they know and all that they experience. This is the will of God. So when we understand that, there's nothing to fear, different lesson, and that there is no will but God's, and we are in fact an extension of God's will. God willed us into life, and we are the extension of that mind. And in that mind is life and love and peace and joy and happiness and everything else that we will in this world say, and it is good. That's where we go when we understand that there is no will but God's, and I share it with him or her. So the lesson has two longer practice periods, as they all have had lately, and then we have the very, very frequent practice periods every half hour. It says to do a minute or two every half hour, because it is in the repetitions of these ideas that we are forming new pathways of thought within our minds, that we may learn them and understand them and believe them. More than anything, that we will in fact believe them. We're given many different phrases to use to go into the practice, to spend a few minutes, when we close our eyes and go in deep as we can and into that space in our mind, that gap that I speak of, and others do as well, that to say that, there is no will but God's. I cannot be in conflict, and I cannot be in conflict if I am recognizing and aligning myself with God's will indeed. They say, the lesson says that I am at peace, that nothing can disturb me. My will is God's. My will and God's are one. God's wills peace for his child. And these are all phrases to repeat as often as possible, again, so that we are going to form those new pathways within our mind and train our mind from the unsustained mind to a cohesive mind, a mind that thinks in accordance with our source, which truly we can't be apart from, but we can believe that we are. So as we go into these spaces of deep thought and trying to connect with our will being the same as God's, we know we are becoming successful when we start to feel peaceful and joyful. This is a right use of this body suit, that we know that we are not that, but that we can use as a teaching tool. And when there is that sense of calm and peace and joy within us, we know we are coming closer to reaching where it is we want to go, which is to connect with the will of God. And we can certainly use the phrases, the suggestions within the lesson, and we can do our own as well to say to ourselves that, this thought is wholly true, and that there are no illusions in my mind, and there is no conflict, that I have no fearful thoughts that will disturb my peace, because that is God's will. I am choosing to have a peaceful day and a peaceful night that is filled with loving communication and thoughts, because that is God's will. And that I will be abundant. I will experience abundance and joy and laughter every day in my life, because that is God's will, that indeed I be joyful. So we can read the lesson and come up with our own phrases. At this point, we're lesson 74. We have an understanding, at least a beginning of understanding of where it is we are going and that we want to get there. So we can reinforce our learning by coming up with more and more phrases that are in agreement with God and with this lesson and with the course. So that was surprising. That's it for today. Please like, please share, please subscribe, please comment, push, pray. Namaste.